Hey guys, my name is Nav and I'm an animator. So I'm making this video to share a workflow which I use most of the times. And I'm pretty sure like most of the animators in industry, especially like experienced animator and most animators use this workflow as well. I call this workflow RIPHIM workflow. I mean, I'm sure like you guys must have never heard about RIPHIM workflow because this is just a workflow which I came up with, and I will explain in a while like what the RIPHIM workflow means. So the reason I named this RIPHIM because I wanted to make it easier to remember, and I needed a word which can communicate with people and which can explain each step. So RIPHIM is just each word have a meaning, and you have to go one by one. These you have to follow these steps one by one. So in RIPHIM, R stand for research and reference. So when you start animating, like the first thing you should do is you should research and find reference for your character. For me, like, do I always find reference and do I always try to research in all my animations? Maybe sometimes when the deadline is too close, I skip finding reference and I try to animate with my brain. But like if I look back when I was a junior, when I was learning animation, I'm still learning animation and I'm sure I will keep learning whole of my life. But to learn animation, you need a reference. You need to find a source. You need a source which can show you how a character, how a creature should move. You need to get all those micro details and to get the weight right and to get all the aspects, like all the principles of animation right. You need a reference. When you're searching for references, you should be trying to find a similar reference to your character or creature. And if you can't find a similar reference, you should try to find at least close to your animation, whatever animation you are trying to make. Try to find as close as possible. If it's a fantasy creature or a fantasy character, try to find the closest animal to that creature, or you can even do your own acting. Like, or if it's a big creature, like for example, like if it's a big dinosaur, you won't be able to find reference for that, but you can find references where and you can try to understand how the big animals move. Try to observe elephants and all those big animals and how their inertia move, and and try to find, like for example, in dinosaurs, and their foot can be like a bird's foot. So you can try to observe all these different things, and to observe all these things you need to find a good references. So the second step, and the second word in RIPHIM is I, which stand for investigate. So after you are done finding your references, you don't want to just open the reference. Okay, so this is the first pose, let's make this, let's do this thing, let's do that thing. You don't want to just start right away. You want to look at all those references and edit them, and you need to investigate what's happening in those references. If it's me, I will go one by one. I will look at all my references and I'll try to find, I will make notes, as much notes as possible, and I will make notes on how many frames that foot is moving from one place to another, and how the foot is moving, on which frame the roll is happening, on which frame the foot is contacting with the ground, and how many frames is taking for the foot to come down, like these kind of things, and what's happening in the body. I will try to investigate as much as possible, and I will try to understand what's happening. The main reason is I need to know how the physics is working. I need to investigate as much as possible how the physics inside the body is working, how the muscles inside the body is working, and how the character is able to move in that way, like and how the gravity is working. Like you need to understand all these things, and for that you need to investigate the references. Okay, so now let's move on to the next step. In RIPHIM, the third word is the third step, which is plan. P for plan. After you are done finding references, after you are done investigating what exactly is happening there in those references, the next step is to plan. Plan is like how you are gonna put that animation inside that character in whatever software you are using. So in whatever software you will be using, you will be most probably you'll be using a rig, right? And so you need to start planning that how will you implement this animation into this character. You can't just straight away you can't just start blocking, and you can't just start doing animation directly. You need to plan like what rotation orders you are going to use. Are you going to use IK, or are you going to use FK or on which frame you are going to switch from IK to FK, or which world space you're going to use. Are you going to use world space, local space, like for hands and for different parts of the body? Are you going to use IK spine, FK spine? You have to plan before you start working. Every character, every creature have hundreds of controllers and sometimes thousands. So to manage all those controllers, you need to plan that how are you going to manage all those things. So yeah, this is the third step, where you sit down and you try to finalize that I will be using I will be using the rig in this way. So yeah, so this is RIP. So now in him is where the actual animation start, the last three words. So the H the H stands for holding poses. So I can even call this blocking, because but blocking is kind of confusing. Like when I say that block your animation, or like you will be thinking like, how should I block? Like what poses should I be blocking? What what exactly is blocking? So for me, I usually start with holding poses. So in every animation, in every whatever you're trying to make, there are holding poses. If you're trying to make cycle, then it's a different thing. There are contact poses, and there are different if you want to make cycle, like there are just it's a different way. But if you're trying to do actual animation, then there are holding poses in most of the animations. What, I could have even used rip bim, but it won't make any sense, right? So in rip him, H, I think at H makes more sense, because holding poses makes more sense than blocking. I can tell my students, and I can tell people, yeah, you should start blocking your animation, and they'll be thinking, how will I block? There are 100 questions, like what is the best way to block? But once you already plan your animation, when you already research and already investigate your references, now it's time, when you start blocking, that these are the holding poses, and you will just go ahead and start making those holding poses. Let's move on to the next step, which is I again, and this I stand for in-betweens. In-betweens, now you already made your holding poses, and now you will move on to what's there in between those holding poses. For me, I don't think about in-betweens just okay, between two poses there's another third pose. That's not in between. In between is between those two holding poses, everything that's happening. Maybe one controller's in between pose will be different than other one. Maybe the hands in between pose will happen on frame 5, and the main body's in between pose will happen on frame 10. The in between poses can happen on different frames. All you have to focus in between stage is how your character is moving from one pose to another, and how you can make that thing happen in your character in the best way possible. You don't have to just stick to one pose, one in between pose. That will never work. At least it doesn't work for me. So I will say in this fifth step, in between step, you should be you should be trying to understand how the character is moving from one pose to another pose, and in that way try to work one by one with the body parts. First, maybe start with the center of gravity controller, COG, and try to animate that nicely. Then maybe start with body, then go with hands, then go with foot, and you try to polish your animation one by one from pose to pose, and this way you will continue to detail your animation. So this was the step 5. I'll move on to step 6, which is M, rip, him, M stand for massage. So this is the last step. Your animation is done. You already did like detailed animation in between phase. Now is the time when you will try to, you know, make everything work together. You know, maybe, because you were working on pose to pose, and you were concentrating on, you know, different parts of the animation. Now is the stage when you will look at the overall animation together, and you will start polishing smaller and smaller details. And the last step in massage, you just massage your animation, like you just look at the overall animation together and you do as much detail as possible. I have to say this last step will take the most amount of time. In this 6 steps, each step takes more time than the previous step. So yeah, guys, this is how I animate. This is my workflow. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe you guys know a better workflow, and people will benefit from, you know, reading comments and, you know, knowing your workflow as well. I wanted to make this video because, you know, this many people, they have, you know, questions in their brain like that: how should I start, and how should I detail things, and what should I do first, what should I do, you know, second. Hopefully this video will be will be able to explain you guys how you should think about animation. So yeah, guys, let me know what you think. Thank you for watching this video till end. Have a good day.